Let me tell you a little bit about Jill. She's actually working right now at a senior community on a job that was rescheduled due to recent snow and ice storms earlier this week. We're grateful she's taking a few minutes to speak with us today. Jill Yesko is a senior move manager, professional organizer, and founder of Discover Organizing in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. She started her company in 2003 and leads a team of professionals to help people downsize and relocate, as well as organize their homes and photo collections. She is a proud member of NASMM, and her company holds NASMM's highest credential, the A Accreditation. Jill is the author of I'm Right Here, 10 Ways to Get Help with Hoarding and Chronic Disorganization, which was published last year. Her recent book, Chronological Order, The Fine Print for a Large Life, co-authored with Laureen Kyle, a senior placement advisor, was published just last month. Please welcome Jill Yesko to Hello. We are delighted to have you. Let's get right to it, Jill.
Okay.
I found this book fascinating as you literally walk us through decades of life with a host of tips and guidance, born both from your personal experience as well as your many professional experiences, working with hundreds, perhaps thousands of clients over the years. You curated a daunting amount of information in one spot for your reader. What a challenge. This book was like having an attorney, a CPA, a social worker, your minister, priest, or rabbi, nurse, best friend, senior move manager, all at the same party. First, what inspired you to write this big book of life with your friend, Laureen Kyle?
Well, thank you for all of those compliments. I appreciate that. This book was really the origin of this book was when I was sitting down with Laureen one day and a real estate agent, and we said, I wish I knew then what I know now about senior real estate and senior issues and Medicare and spend downs and money. And, because we're working with so many seniors, and I always feel like I have to Google everything, or I have to I don't know, I better get a specialist in here to help you. And that's totally fine. And that's what we do. We have a great team of helpers, but the origin of the book came out of, well, let's just have a Facebook page. And then it was like, no, let's do a blog. And then Lauren and I looked at each other and were like, we could just do a book that has a blog that, so that's kind of how it all started. It was actually 3 years ago where we got the idea, and we actually finished writing it 2 years ago. But with the pandemic, there was a lot of just delays and lags on editing and doing some other stuff, just because we had to all save our companies. So,
Exactly.
That's presidents.
Well, for sure. And I have to say it's fairly unique in the sense that I don't think you could necessarily go to Amazon or walk into a Barnes and Noble right now and find something that's this comprehensive, and it's really user-friendly. I love the conversational approach to the book, where you speak and then Laureen speaks, and you're speaking in, really everyday language. We're not overwhelmed with legalese and financialese and stuff like that. So, quick question on this one. You talk about work-life balance as being a bit of a misnomer, I think is actually what you said. I'm really interested in this idea because we've really just learned recently, really from the pandemic, quite honestly, that it's more about work-life harmony, not work-life balance. And you kind of go into that a little bit, maybe not using those exact terms, but what do you think is the distinction between work-life balance, sort of more of what we were used to, more 20th century, and what's the new thing with work-life harmony? And do you think it's here to stay?
I think what is here to stay is prioritization of what your values are. And I think the pandemic has actually forced us all to kind of look inside, not just look inside our closets, but look inside what really matters in our life. And I think that's where the harmony part comes in, because I know who I am. I know that I am a very driven individual, and I have to respect that about myself instead of fight it and try to get a 50-50 split with my time. But I, I love my children so hard, right? But so what do I do is I pulled them into the company and gave them jobs where they can shine. And right now, Mary is acting as our operations manager and my son is our CIO. And that has been such a gift for me because I get that exposure to them. And so that's where I find that harmony, is because I get to be their mom and they get to support something that, frankly, supported them growing up, because I've been doing this 18 years. So I think, finding out who you are, and I just gave a talk about this last week, finding out who you are and having your work life and your home life be around that person and not trying to push back on the entrepreneur that you are, but just making sure that you're still honoring that relationship. And, I'm just remembering these times as a single mom at the restaurant. I finally get my kids to the restaurant, and my BlackBerry back then was next to my PDA, and I was trying to schedule, and I was like, and I think I even wrote this in the book. It was just one of those aha moments where I just knew I needed to put down the phone, like stop it. And so I was able to focus on that person at a time. So that's where that work-life harmony is that they know it's a part of who I am. They know that I will do it, but I won't do it during dinner, during play times, during special times with them. But it is, who we are right now. And so finding that time to honor yourself, knowing that, for me, I know I like the adrenaline, what kind of, hardcore sports that I do. I know that about myself, and I have to start honoring that I like the activity. Like, I like being here today and all this fun and mayhem, and where's the oxygen tank, and did anybody see the charger for I love that flurry, and I know that about myself. And so even after stepping away and writing these books that I've written, I love being back. I love being back in the fold, and it's just knowing yourself in the end.
For sure, for sure. Well, we're going to have to look for that book in about 5 years, Building a Family Business. I'm sure that you've got a lot of content for that down the road, because we're seeing more of that. Entrepreneurship has really grown in the last 10 years, and we'll be seeing lots more family businesses. As a senior move manager, you spend a lot of time throughout the book, and rightfully so, discussing our stuff. You explore normal accumulating versus hoarding. Can you sort of explain the contrast between those two a little bit more?
Sure. And a lot of things that I do see with seniors is that it looks and feels sometimes like hoarding behaviors when we walk into a home and we see everything on counters, or we see everything kind of on dressers and bureaus and things like that at lower levels, and things that are around like recliners and sofa recliners, and we see lots of paper stacked up and stuff, and we go, oh, this must be. But we really take a look and we listen hard, we can hear that this person has a disability or isn't able to move or doesn't have that mobility. So they're gathering things where they can access them and see them. So we kind of have to really think about that too. So there's lots of indicators that tell us if it's hoarding versus regular accumulations. But one of the things that I've seen, and that is in all the research, and of course anyone knows that about hoarding, is that it's in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual as it finally has a diagnosis. But we look at the impact it has on their daily life. The stuff is actually getting in the way of having a functioning home, a functioning life, having relationships. The stuff becomes the obstacle itself, and not only just that physical barrier that they're using. And we also see that there's always an underlying and causative trauma at the base of everything that kind of began the behaviors. So, and we're also seeing a lot of comorbidity. So when you see that normal accumulation where we might have, a collection of things like precious moments, like Hummels, and we go, oh my gosh, Hummels upon Hummels upon Hummels, that's a collection. And sometimes we know that it's a true collection, even though somebody might have gone a little crazy on QVC, or on Amazon, that's behind glass, it's dusted, it's curated, there might even be an index. So there's a collecting thing going on there. Might also be a shopping addiction, which we could talk about another time. But I think accumulations that are curated and cared for versus some of the situations that you see where there is just this inability to release. That's also another big indicator, is something we have to consider. And so when we as senior move managers walk in to do that first assessment or to do the estimate, whatever you guys, call it in your business, there's just so many things to look out for and listen for with those that are hoarding and having hoarding behaviors or experiencing hoarding. It's another way of putting it, versus someone that just has been unwell and has the comorbidity of a physical disability or depression, and therefore it's more situational versus chronic. I hope that helped.
When you are approached about a job, and hoarding is the ultimate sort of part of that job, are you usually given a heads up by the family or whoever the referral is, whether it's, an elder law attorney or whatever, or are you mostly walking in, unknowing until you get there?
No, I'd say 90% of the time we know that there is this behavior occurring and that the environment's going to be very full. And it's sometimes the client themselves. There's a lot of emotion on those phone calls when they're calling themselves, but sometimes it's the daughter, it's the son, it's the neighbor who's the person that's in charge of their estate that, now the person has gone into rehab for a broken knee, for instance, and they want to have us come in while the person's gone at rehab and empty the house. And I'm like, we can't do that.
Yeah.
That would cause so much more harm. So we use lots of, technical tools and FaceTiming and things like that when someone's in rehab. But basically, we do know a good bit. We don't see the whole scope. And people are usually that are experiencing hoarding are very private. So we can't do the typical, hey, send me a picture of your space and I'll tell you how to, what my thoughts are about how long it's going to take to pack it up or whatever. So we do we have like a lot of questions that we ask on that initial phone call, even if it's with an elder law attorney or even if it's with the daughter. And the most important one is, does the client want this to happen? Because there have been times, speaking of surprises, Mary Kay, walking into a house where they don't know we're coming is the worst possible ambush, and they're like, we ring the doorbell and we're, standing there in our, uniform or our professional wear to do our assessment. And they're like, what is she doing here? And then you're like, okay, so we needed to tell her that we were coming. So that's why we learned a long time ago, we always make sure that the client's okay with us coming, even if that means us calling the client themselves, even if another referral source connected us. So
I love that because, as you know, and we need to remind everyone else that, one of the cardinal tenets of our code of ethics is the client is the person in transition, not the person paying the bill, right? So I love to hear that, Jill. Thank you so much for that. One of my favorite parts of the book is when you talk about, as young and midlife parents, how we try to curate our children's lives, and all the trophies and the tap shoes and the little league uniforms that are just everywhere. I love that part, and I'll leave that for people to read the book about that. But I want to focus on, let's fast forward a few decades, and we are adult children now, taking care of our parents, right? So it's not our parents taking care of us anymore. It's the other way around. And in the book, you talk about when adult children call you for assistance and what's kind of going on underneath the surface. And you say that one of the things that kind of is a consistent factor in almost all these calls is the adult children don't want the parents to feel less than, in later life. They don't want them to feel marginalized because the adult child thinks they need help with something, that they're calling you about. And they are fearful of having that big conversation with parents they adore and love and don't want to hurt their feelings. What do you tell a son or a daughter who calls you and expresses those fears to you?
Well, that is a great question. It's so near and dear to my heart. One of the best techniques I use is, would you want your children calling you today and talking to you that way? Meaning in a kind of disrespectful, talking over you, I know best for you tone. Because in the end, you're their parent. You're the one that knew best for them. And now they're worried, you're worried about mom and dad now. And I do have this whole section in the book in every chapter, except the 80s and 90s, and it's called About Your Parents. And it's so kind of how to deal with your parents at each decade that you're in. And that difficult conversation is, I don't think you're safe. I don't think, if you start out with a question, do you think you're safe here? I'm just talking to you, mom. Like, how do you feel about living here, instead of coming at them right away with your opinion? We kind of, as their children, had to hear their opinions because they would give us that unsolicited advice, usually in the back seat when I was coming home from they would pick me up from a movie, and my mom would call it lecture time. I have some things, and my sister and I would be like, oh, because we were trapped with our seatbelts on. Probably we didn't have seatbelts then, but anyway, you know what I'm trying to say. It was, you were trapped and you were listening to those opinions, and now they're in the back seat with their seatbelts on, and we're driving them around to different doctor's appointments and such, so to speak. And it's so degrading for that person to have, we're just going to take your keys away and we're going to do this. You shouldn't be driving anymore. And and I'm researching some medical, devices for you. And well, wait. Let's engage that person as almost, if you're gonna, don't talk lower, at least you can go on a peer level. So if you can get even with that person in an evenly toned, almost in like a collegial manner, to say, I got some worries and I have some questions. Can I just talk to you about those questions? And I talked about family meetings and how important those are, but making sure that you're not talking as if they're not in the room. And I know a lot of senior move managers are nodding right now saying, absolutely not. We would never do that. As senior move managers, we would never do that. But when it comes to our own parents, sometimes that's really hard when we're scared and we're really worried about them. So when we try to transfer that to an adult child that is calling us saying, she needs to move, she is going to fall a third time, I'm terrified. And I'm like, okay, let's just sit at the table and see how she's feeling about it. You might be pleasantly surprised when a neutral party can ask some questions. So finding that neutral party, it doesn't always have to be me. It could be a neighbor. It could be a really good friend down the hall in the apartment building that's also noticing some things. So approaching it almost in that peer-like fashion, instead of that bossy overtones of I'm in charge, I'm in control. And what we've also seen, Mary Kay, is, I'm sure you have too, is that sometimes one of the children, it could, and I'm not saying it's gender specific, but when you have a type A and a type B person, and that type A person is a checklist person, like, okay, move mom into nursing home in 2022. I'm going to put that on my list. I'm going to check it off. Okay, first I got to call this. And the person doesn't even know it's happening, but they have a goal to get, that mom moved this year. And they don't really take the time to take the steps. Like maybe the type B person might gently guide that senior into, their mom or dad, or even grandparent, into a senior community that's right for them. But the type A person sort of just wants to get it done and then get going on the next, And so it is just such a process, and we have to kind of know ourselves, like getting back to that know thyself thing.
Well, and don't you think a lot of adult children, it's been my experience, and I was a case manager many years ago, a geriatric case manager, and I think a lot of adult children felt like if they were coming from a place of love it sort of negated all the other bad karma or whatever that was around that conversation. And I think that's giving yourself sort of a permission that maybe isn't really right. Do you think that? I mean, I think a lot of tough conversations are coming from a place of love, right? But the place of love doesn't, allow for being, a bossy, micromanaging daughter either, even though it is coming from a place of love. There's a place of love, and then there's all these other things that the adult
There's also
child,
a place of control.
right?
And so sometimes when love turns into control, and we see it all the time, right, in our profession, where the parent shows the slightest disability to read something, and all of a sudden it's, I'll do it for you. I'll do it for you. Let me do it. And no, why don't you just give them some space, because they know how to do it. They taught you to do it, and let them take their time and do it. And again, getting back to that love place, is, there's a lot of misbalanced time that maybe somebody, like I'm in my 50s, and here I am trying to run this company and do all these things that I've always dreamed of doing once my kids are getting older. And now a parent is ill, and now that's one more thing that kind of takes away from my quality of life. And being able to delegate that to a senior move manager, to a geriatric care manager, they feel like that might make them look like they don't love their parent, but they're actually loving them by letting someone that has the patience and the time and the professionalism and the compassion to step in. And I think that's a really strong message we need to send people in the 50s and 60s like me, to say, it's okay that you don't have to do everything for your mom and dad and take over and then become resentful, burnout, right? The cycle. We see the cycle all the time of that person that comes in. And even in this particular job, there's a friend down the hall that was helping these clients, and she was so caring and so worried that we were kind of stepping on each other's toes. So I kind of did this dance where I stepped back and I let the neighbor step in, and but I could see that she was burning out too. I said, we can take the morning, and if you need a morning, we are going to work with this family, and then you can come back around too when they're done with their orientation. And okay. And I could just see the relief, because no one's really giving them permission to step away. Yeah. And I think we need to give ourselves permission to step away as caregivers and as children, adult children, and to have someone else help us.
You identify in the book the two main areas of concern that adult children, they sort of wake up to the idea that their parent might need help, are falls and medication management. You really single those two out. Tell us a bit more. And what is maybe the senior move manager's role when those specific concerns bubble up?
Well, the one great thing about senior move managers is that we know how to make a plan. And we know how to communicate with families. I think those are two really strong areas that support those two areas of concerns, because we're all really good at safety. I believe that senior move managers that are NASMM members have had so much training in safety recognition, of issues. When we set up a home, we're so careful. And this particular couple I'm working with right now is completely blind, both of them. And so you take safety to a whole nother level of not leaving anything in the way at all. But I feel like our job, we are uniquely positioned, I feel, to help with organizing and working with a family and adult child to organize medication, because we know so much about all the tools that are available, digital tools, physical tools, like little, even just a physical plastic pop-up from the drugstore medication thing to an app, right? I mean, I could watch my dad's insulin from my app on my phone, and I would be like, Dad, you need to you need to have something now, go to the fridge and get you glycerin or whatever it was. So you can take advantage, and we are so educated at NASMM about all the different tools that are available for families to use for communication and managing medication. And so there really is no excuse. There are so many great tools out there that I think the general public could have access to, with or without us in their lives. So I feel like the more we know, and that's why it was so important for me to put it in the book about managing medication, writing down medication, being aware of what you're taking. And I even have a story of, one of my friends who went on a vacation, and she noticed a couple had a medical issue, had a medical emergency, and the woman never wrote her own pills down, and the husband didn't have a written pills down. And so they could have really hurt. Like, thank God they called the pharmacy in America and got the list. And that was my friend's idea, like, call the pharmacy. I know her pharmacist, and thank God Linda was there. But so really just, I guess, stop being in denial that, we are aging and our parents are aging, and to get that piece organized, because as we know, in a moment, things could change. So having a tool of not only recording those things, and as a senior move manager, we can help our clients as they're downsizing to say, I haven't noticed a record of do you keep that somewhere? Can we, and does your daughter have that too? Okay, great. And, I'm noticing that the pill dispensers are always empty. Are you off all medication? Like, and just asking questions like, how can I help this along? And maybe we can get a geriatric care manager in here to get in touch with your doctors and all of your, not only just the prescribers, but also maybe somebody's using 3 different pharmacies and we don't even know that because they got a deal and they got a gift if they signed up at this pharmacy. Oh. So I think that communication, and we have such a keen sense of observance. I think a lot of us that have been doing this a while, especially, notice things that need attention and that need to be recorded and documented and organized for that client.
For sure. A conversation about memory loss and dementia features prominently in the last part of your book. What are some of your strategies for dealing with both the adult children and the client themselves, the older client? When you come on a situation, you've been hired for a job, and as you start working with your older adult client, clearly there's some confusion, memory loss that has really escaped maybe the older adult themselves. And, frankly, adult children don't always want to see what's right there in front of them, because once you sort of put a name to a problem, the problem needs a solution, and everyone's very nervous about that. So we try not to see what's there, and we try not to call it what it is. What is the senior move, in your experience, what's the senior move manager's role with that once you're sort of on site and on the job?
That's a great question, because I think we, again, have such an important role to play in that scenario. And that is to be positive and to meet that client where they are. And I do reference one of, a guru I love on dementia is Rachel Wonderland. And she has a program called Dementia by Day. And I'm also a dementia friend. So I went through the Dementia Friends program in Pittsburgh, and our whole team did. And we learned a lot about meeting that client where they are. And if they say something like, "Where's my husband?" even though the husband's been gone for 5 years, and just say, "You know what? I don't know." And instead of saying, "He died," we don't want to deliver that news for the first time. And those are certain things that you learn. And I know Teepa Snow delivered a beautiful bit about that when we were in California at conference at NASMM, and she did such a beautiful job, kind of being positive and being with that senior in that moment that they were having, and being very present for them. And I'd say, as a senior move manager, yes, we have a job to do. We have to get that senior transitioned. So there's a couple of things that we do. We find out who the support people are. Like in this particular situation, we don't have dementia present, but we do have a disability present. And so we do find someone that can be with them to support them as they try to avoid the relocation stress, right? As that relocation stress syndrome is such a real thing. And it especially affects those with dementia. So what we try to do is get those natural supports in place and get those things organized, get that team around them that they're used to having. But then we also, our whole team will be briefed on what kind of dementia it is, because there's so many different types. And we try to get an understanding before we come in about how we're going to respond in certain scenarios and if certain things happen. And then of course, teaching someone that is having memory loss about where things are is a whole different type of experience as well. So yes, there is a lot of repetition, but because we are who we are happy to repeat it as if they're hearing it for the first time. And that's what we have to keep saying to our staff and to any caregivers that come in and out. I have to sort of remind some, CNAs from time to time that are in the room, remember, she's hearing this news for the first time today. And she said, but I've said it 3 times. And I have to it's a really great opportunity for us as senior move managers with all the education we have to educate those caregivers and to support those caregivers, because they're getting frustrated too. They're getting burnout too. So the more you learn about all different types of dementia and to be positive, and to kind of say to them, yes, it is hot in here. Let me see what I can do about that. Even if 5 minutes later they say, boy, it sure is hot in here. So yeah, that's right. It is warm in here. And just not being like, I know,
Right.
it's so hard to be
Have you
patient.
ever had to actually inform an adult child or an older adult what your concerns were about memory loss and
Yeah,
confusion?
that's so awkward, Mary Kay, because we do it. We absolutely do, because we feel like it's within our purview to do it, because we'll see observances and we'll notice things. And we do like to tell the family member, if the parent
Well,
has
it's like if
allowed,
you see something, say something. It's just like
right.
everything else in life, right? Yeah.
And I will say that sometimes we've seen an inappropriate placement about to take place and we've stepped in and we've said, we realize, and that you've signed a contract with this place, and they've called us after the fact, we're just coming in to maybe pack up and do things and make the transition. We realize that you signed a contract, but this level of care, based on what we've seen in the home, may not be appropriate. And we invite you to go back to that senior community and see if they have a different type of level of care available to them, instead of saying, oh, you should not be moving there because they don't know, we try to push that back on the family to say, we've seen some things that are in line with acute memory loss, not just misplacing, not normal aging stuff. This goes way beyond normal aging stuff. And let us share with you what we've seen. And you guys are her care team, and you can do what you choose, and we will transition her calmly and peacefully and as with little stress as possible. But within a few months, the situation will become somewhat dire based on what we've seen. And they're like, oh, I just thought she wasn't, with it lately because she's been under so much stress. But looking back, and they have this eye-opening experience with us. And sometimes we're like, yeah, and I'm sorry to be the messenger, but this is what we're observing, and you can do what you'd like with that information.
That's wonderful, because that's really gutsy to get yourself in the middle of that, and that could backfire. But I respect the ethical, piece of that, because that's really hard to do. It's really hard to deliver tough, yeah.
And I think because I was a case manager like you, I mean, you were geriatric, I was a family case manager. So I think I'm able to have those maybe more uncomfortable conversations, but in a gentle way. I just kind of always invite people to consider some other options at times, without being too direct and, trying to step on families' toes, because they're eventually, we're going to leave, right? We're going to walk away. We're going to take our boxes and bubble wrap and paper with us. And they're kind of left with this situation in their lap. And we do follow-up visits, of course, but sometimes Carrie and my team will say, we're really worried about this woman and we have to have a
Now,
team
a
meeting.
conversation like that, would you always be sort of the lead on that? You wouldn't ever have a team lead or someone like that? You would
Well,
always.
if I'm the team lead, then I'm doing it. But Carrie and, all the other people that work are completely capable
Okay, all right. I just was
yeah.
curious, just as an adult child, who would I be getting that information from?
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
kind of like at a school, when a school senses that a child needs early intervention of, speech therapy or whatever, who is that person, and sometimes it is an aide in the room rather than the teacher themselves because they're more on the ground. So I was just kind of curious.
Yeah. And if one of
Yeah.
my team members feels uncomfortable initiating that or feels, whatever, I'll say, I'm happy to sit with you and go over options since I have more experience. But I think you need to be reporting what you've seen to this family member.
And they would be talking with you first before they talk to anyone
Yeah,
else.
they do. We have a team meeting. We regroup.
Great.
We'll sit out in a parking lot or we'll just I'll get into my van and we'll just be like, we're worried. Yeah, let's talk about next steps. So I think that's really important to collaborate with your team, even if your team is just you. So there might be some senior move managers
Yeah,
out there
for
that
sure.
don't have large teams. So if it's you plus a family member plus someone that's there all the time, like somebody from home instead, you can just kind of see, what should we do here? And sometimes the client has a lot of insight and no one's asking the client. So we try to ask the client, like, are you feeling okay, like, about your memory today? And they're like, honestly, I feel like I've been slipping for some time and I'm scared to talk about it. I'm like, well, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
And then I can take some notes and then we can talk to somebody that will help you, because I can't help you with a lot of those things, but I can find someone that will. And that's what the beauty is of our role, again, is because we all know people that can help that aren't necessarily us.
Well, that's what I like to say, that senior move managers have a digital Rolodex the size of a small animal, right? I mean, it's just like, you guys are on the ground in every nook and cranny of your local towns and suburbs and whatever. And so you know who to call when it's not really maybe your responsibility or your obligation. That virtual Rolodex is just amazing. It's worth gold. Another question is, we're seeing in NASMM, we're seeing a ton of activity around the staying at home movement or aging in place, where senior move managers are helping to create a whole new living environment right where the person exists today, and there's no moving involved. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, we actually love that. If we can do that prior to, maybe if they're not really quite ready, we can make the home, we can adapt the home so that it is much safer and it's much more enjoyable. Of course, a lot of that involves decluttering and making some decisions and removing some large pieces of obstacle type furniture, like coffee tables sometimes, or just unnecessarily large dining room sets. We can make that into a bistro type setting. So there's furniture and environmental impacts on that, but there's also new ways to communicate within that space. And they may not ever visit that second floor again. And we can completely make a whole first floor into their living space. But the decluttering piece of that is really important. Getting back into that medication management stuff is really important. Where's the new hub? It's maybe not where the old hub was of information. Maybe we're moving that to a different part of the home that's closer to the restroom or bathroom. So maybe yes, there's bars that you can be adding onto bathroom stalls, and there's ways you can adapt homes by making it wider. But honestly, and I have to credit NASMM for this, I learned about universal design at one of my NASMM classes, and now everyone at my company has to be well versed in universal design, because if a client says, I'm going to be ready to move in about 3 years, but can you come in and make my home comfortable? Because I don't have the ability to move right now financially. I will in a few years, or I'm waiting for my name to come up at the senior community. They said it's about a 2-year wait and it's where I want to be because it's down the street. Okay, let's declutter and get, we have plenty of time, no pressure now, which I love about the aging in place process, is because we can slowly help them go through things, not 2 weeks before a move, get that call saying, we have to downsize and move because our name came up at the place. I'm like, okay. And then I'm calling subcontractors and my kids, put on their uniforms. Right. So the point is if aging in place is such a beautiful natural process that if we can engage people in that sooner than later, even people, young in their 50s and 60s, aging in place is such a wonderful concept, and to adapt their existing homes. And I do talk about that in the book, about how a couple just completely, they wanted their home, they loved their home, and they had an architect come in and made it extremely safe, open concept, accessible, very stylish things that were put in that were kind of concealed safety devices. So it was really cool. And they wired the house in a smart way so they could give voice commands to open things and close things. I mean, amazing. And it was just a little house, and they had saved up all their lives, and they said, we're going to stay here for as long as we can.
Right. Well, and I think we're going to see a lot. We already are. I was talking to a bunch of senior move managers the other day on a Zoom, and they were saying how boomers are just, ringing the phone off the wall. And, I see it in my friend group in our mid 60s. They all are wanting to age in place, but they do want sound advice about it. They don't want to just, Google it. They really would like to talk to someone who knows what they're doing. And so do you essentially like sort of shadow them to sort of go through what a day in the life so that you can create those new hubs or make those adjustments? So you sort of, almost shadow them, I guess, where
Yeah, well,
what their life looks like.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it, shadowing. Certainly we kind of do this thing. I feel like it's more like parallel play, right? Because like they're working in one area of the home, doing something, and while we might be decluttering something or working with them, we're very observant and we're always watching what they're doing, and we see them coming in and out of a certain space a lot. And I'm like, she uses that pantry for many more things than just food. Okay, she has a printer in there. Okay, so that's telling me she's got, okay, so it's that watching. So it's sort of like while we're doing our job, sometimes we're watching them exist in their homes and seeing what their patterns are. And that's, when we do assessments for aging in place, we don't need to shadow them or parallel play with them, because they're going to come right out with us and say, I'm in this room all the time. I am never, ever in these 2 rooms, and they're on the 2nd floor, but I need to, and I'm like, okay, how does that look for you? If you could just, wave your magic wand and make your house, more safe or livable or open, or what does that look like to you? And they're like, well, I don't want to lose any style.
Yeah.
So, I don't want it to look like there's grab bars everywhere. I'm like, okay, then we can position certain things in certain rooms to feel that way. And, we have to take into consideration if they have a partner or spouse that is needing more support than they do. So, we ask a lot of questions on our aging in place assessments versus just a normal downsize transition, because we're trying to make this exact home feel, we want it to be their dreams come true too for the next 3, 5, 10 years. We want it to be comfortable and happy.
So another thing you say in the book is, and you say it just straight out, declarative sentence, not all families are loving.
That's right.
And I think that's so true. Have you worked with families who do not always have the older adult's best interest in mind, where adult children are fighting and arguing at every turn? What about when the actual older adult is dishonest and or belligerent to their own family members and to your staff? Lots of tough family history bubbles up while you're trying to work your senior move manager magic. How do you handle this?
Oh boy, that's a loaded question. So we don't necessarily take every job as well, because if we feel that there isn't going to be, and that's just from years of practice and years of going into homes where there's just so much negativity. And I tell my entire team, and I tell this to myself, you do not have to accept unacceptable behavior on ourselves. So if we're being mistreated on purpose or in a callous manner, I don't necessarily need that client that badly to be treated that way. So there's that. But sometimes mid process, there is sort of this change of attitude. And when we're starting to release things and releasing memories, or we're digging through memories, a lot of negativity and emotions come up. And I think as senior move managers, we witness a lot of vigor in the beginning of a process, or even with some trepidation. And then as we see them wearing down and getting tired, the filters start disappearing. And while they may have the executive functions to make those decisions, their mood swings may be difficult to manage. So there's all those things. So again, getting back to that family meeting in the very, very, very beginning, I always sit down with the key players and I'm like, it's really important to me that I identify one person that is my point person. And this person needs to be available to me if we're having, any concerns or we're having some conflicts, so that we can decide together how we're going to approach and resolve the issues. And I tell them what they can expect to feel sometimes during this process. So having that family meeting is really critical. It is a big part of our business to have them there, even if they're in California and the client's in Pittsburgh here, to get that person on the phone and just make sure they understand they have to give at least an hour of their time. A lot of people will come on and be like, okay, 15 minutes, right?
Yeah.
No, this is a big deal. Mom's moving. And we do see a lot of we do see a lot of conflict. We do see a lot of bitter situations. And like I say in the book, yes, not all families are loving. So it's okay to have us work with a friend of the family. If the blessing, again, it's the client's in charge. So if they have less conflict and less sparring with a friend, and then that information can filter the family later, then that's who we talk to, because again, it's about the client.
Right.
But yeah, when we get into issues where I wanted that china and nobody wants the china. I don't even know why I gave that as an example. I wanted that diamond necklace.
Okay,
I'm
there you
the
go.
older sister. I should get that. And that's why I always talk about the importance of planning in the book, about planning ahead when we have our capabilities and we have our time and we have our estate attorney, and maybe we use a software program to, choose the items that mean the most to us and who we want them to go to and that kind of thing in our estate planning process. But most of the time that doesn't happen. So it gets into these difficult conversations. So again, as a senior move manager, sometimes you're wearing the black and white stripes and the whistle and you're running around on the football field, which is sometimes, the bedroom of the family home. And you're saying, you know what, this is let's just call it what it is. This is a very tense situation. There's a lot of emotions right now. We have a couple of choices. We can stop for the day. And I can go, or I can go get us out of this space and walk down the hall or go to the kitchen. We can make a cup of tea and we can just kind of take a deep breath. We can reset and we can talk about what the priorities really are right now for both of you. And sometimes they're willing to do that. And that's a beautiful thing. And sometimes they're like, no, I'm too angry. And I'm like, okay, well, then it looks like it's option one, because these types of family issues are, we're not trained family therapists, right? We're just there to finish whatever the scope of services is, and whether it's aging in place, whether it's downsizing, whatever it is, maybe we're just called in to do a settle in and an unpack, and we unearth some things. So we always just say, this is our job. This is our role. It is not to correct a conflict, but it is to get this process completed. And you may need a geriatric care manager in here to work with you on these family issues. And a geriatric care manager is a wonderful resource for you because they will locate a great family therapist that might be able to work with you guys and resolve some of these issues internally. But in terms of getting this project done today, let's refocus on what you told me that you wanted me to do for you today. And sometimes that kind of resets that button for everybody and gets everybody going, okay, we just have to sort with Jill.
Right.
Okay, we just have to sort. We have to just
And it sounds like that family meeting at the get-go is an important step. You know, another thing
the tone.
sets the tone. Another thing, Discover Organizing, the name of your company. You have a specialty in photo management. I know there's a lot of emphasis, and in the book, there's tips throughout the whole book that no matter what you're talking about, somehow you can tie it into photo management. It's very impressive. But what would you tell someone who has suitcases of photos stacked in their basement about why they should, once and for all, get a handle on it? What do these snapshots in time mean to us in the fast-paced, overstimulating, constantly shifting 21st century? Like what? I mean, I'm just personally a huge fan of photos. Like it's the only thing I care about, frankly, that I own or that I wanted to get after my parents passed away. It was literally the only thing, diamond necklaces be damned kind of,
Right.
Why, but how do we explain to someone who maybe doesn't value them now today, why they should hire a photo manager or why they should even consider this sort of a big area of exploration for them?
Yeah, it's so important. It is the common denominator in every home. It's the photographs that we've taken. And I know we all took those photographs for a reason. We took those photos to remember a moment or remember a person or to remember an event or a trip or something. And yet they get buried with our everyday life. And, the paradox is that if we lost them, we would just be beside ourselves. But yet we don't take care of them or curate them and that whole thing. And so when I'm working with a family, especially, as a senior move manager going in and I see the boxes of photos and I say, what's your plan with these? I don't instantly say, I'm a photo manager and I could scan all these and put these into a book for you. So I say, what is your plan with your photos? How do you feel about these photos? And a lot of the times it's I just got busy living my life and I've got 20 boxes of slides from when my dad was in, the war, and I just never did anything with them. And so you can provide them a solution to, get the photos digitized, and then, you can make a slideshow out of it. You can put it on a digital frame and enjoy seeing them. We love this Nixplay frame. I just love using it. I'm not affiliated with them at all. It's just a product I absolutely love. And my son bought me one for Mother's Day, and I have playlists, just like a song list on your Spotify, whatever. I make a list, and I have playlists for family, playlists for friends, and then I can just play them all at once if I want. And what I've learned about that is that now I'm enjoying, just as someone that is in her 50s that has all types of media from my parents' slides, which I just converted. I didn't even know what I looked like when I was 6 years old. My mom was so busy. I was like, oh, I was adorable, joking around. She's like, yeah, you're pretty cute. But, you get all these slides, and we have our Brownie camera roll film. We've got, our 110 old cameras that we find. We have, oh my gosh, they're just everywhere. The little tiny camera cards, the SD cards that are in a baggie because we're terrified that they're going to get shoveled around with something else. We have so in our age group, 50s and 60s, we have so much type of media. So if you as a person, as a senior move manager, can come in with a solution to that pain and that guilt, because it is a lot of guilt, especially with women, I've noticed they feel like they should have done a better job at managing those archives. And not everybody's like that, not everybody is, but I always see one person in the family, it's usually female, that is handed the box or the 10 boxes or the bags that were found under grandma's bed. Can you just do something with these, sister or whatever? And so then there's the guilt. What do I do with these? So, I mean, the answer is to sort first always. and then to digitize, because you don't want to sort a bunch of sunsets or digitize a bunch of sunsets.
Right, right. They can be gotten off Google Images.
Right.
People, right? Everything should be
Right.
people,
So
right?
find the faces is my, I say this all the time with my clients when we're sitting down, find the faces, tell the story. And
Right.
even
I
if
love
you
it.
just pick 10 pictures and throw the rest away, it's okay with me. There's no like, oh, you shouldn't be throwing those away. No. There's no should, there's no guilt, there's no judgment. If pictures aren't your thing, it's okay. But find the faces and tell the story of at least 10 pictures. And I guarantee you'll have a beautiful little keepsake for yourself, either digitally or you can print it up like in a book. You can print it up and make a storybook. And there's lots of great software out there that it's very inexpensive now to do it. And I just strongly encourage it.
Great, thank you. I'm not sure if we have any questions actually from our listeners, our viewers. We have, I think, 2 questions here. Let's see. Oh, Jennifer has answered all of them already. So everyone's asking where to get the books. So we will put the website. Well, it can be found on discoverorganizing.com, I would imagine, as well as Amazon. And yes, and we will make sure everyone gets the links to your book. I'll tell you guys, it's really, it's phenomenal. And it would be a great present for anyone at all ages, because she starts out in the 20s and gosh, if I only knew, if I had only had this book 40 years ago. No, just so many great, it would be a great college graduation book, or, at any time. Just, when your friend turns 40, give them this book. It's just no matter what age. So Jennifer, do we have any questions?
We do not have any questions. We are good to go.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jill. Fabulous book.
Thank you.
Can get back to doing your senior move manager magic, as I called it. We appreciate the fact that you didn't reschedule this, even though you had to reschedule your senior move job today. So thank you so much. And
I'm really glad to be here, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about the book and to talk about senior move managers who are just so near and dear to my heart. So thank you guys for listening, everyone that came. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
As a reminder, this recording will be available on the NASMM website as well as on our social media platforms, and we encourage you to share this with your team and your